Hi there, I'm Scott and this is GreatScott Knitting Dyes Yarn episode 20. Today I'm going to be dyeing a full skein of Lion's Brand Fisherman's Wool, but I actually have split this skein into two different skeins. The big skein that you get from Lion's Brand is a bit over 200 grams. So I've split this up into two equal weighted skeins of yarn. I'm going to be dyeing this in Wilton's food coloring, and I recently picked up this 4-pack that has these pastel colors of creamy peach, rose petal pink, cornflower blue, and moss green. I have my two skeins of yarn soaking in about, probably 16 cups of water and about 3 tablespoons of white vinegar. So just to kind of recap how to dye protein fiber, you need that protein fiber like wool, mohair, alpaca, maybe even silk. But you can't use this technique on cotton fiber or linen or other plant fibers. You need that protein fiber to make this work. Secondly, you do need that dye, and I choose to use food coloring right now, but you could use professional acid dyes as well. But for that type of dyeing, you do need dedicated dye equipment that cannot be used for food. Then the other thing you need is, of course, water and an acid. I like to use white vinegar when I'm dyeing, but you could also use something like citric acid. So now that I have my yarn soaking, I'm going to leave it soak for about 30 minutes so that it gets good and saturated. Now, Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool is a non-superwash wool. So I do need to be careful as I dye this fiber so that it doesn't felt. So not a lot of agitation, and we also don't want to shock it in terms of heat, because agitation, which is moving the yarn around a lot while it's wet, or shocking it, going from cold to hot or hot to cold, can cause it to felt rather easily. So I'm going to be pretty gentle as I manipulate this yarn and dye it. All right, let's start this process. I've already mixed my dye and I have heated my yarn in the oven. I have it slightly twisted, and I'm going to start with moss green on this one end. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to approach this, but yeah, you know what, I think I'm going to move on to the cornflower blue. But before I do, off camera, I'm going to add the rest of that moss green color, because I've kind of changed up how I'm going to do this. Instead of doing all 4 colors on one side, I'm just going to do 2 colors on one side and then add the other 2 colors to the other side. So as I'm looking at this cornflower blue, you can kind of see hints of it trying to break. So there's clearly some pink in this cornflower blue color, because you can kind of start seeing hints of purple. So I've heated those 2 colors in the oven and retwisted my skeins, and now I'm going to add that creamy peach across the bottom on this side. And you notice I've done a light twist to the yarn so that some of that moss green remains on the yarn and not covered up by that peachy color. And then you can see that pinkish purple at the top where there used to be the blue. It actually did break. So over the top of that, I'm adding that rose petal pink. And now I'm going to pop this into the oven and let it heat. So after about 30 minutes in the oven, my water has, for the most part, cleared. And I kind of have can see how these skeins are looking. I can see that blues and the pinks and the purples and some peachy colors. So it's great. So I'm going to let that cool off completely and rinse it in some cool tap water off camera and hang it to dry. So now that my skeins are dry, you can really kind of get a sense of what they look like now. I really like the very pale wash of color across these skeins of yarn. It gives a kind of a real sense of early spring where the colors aren't intense yet, like they're going to be in late, as we get into the summertime or later in the spring. The pinks are pale. The peaches are almost barely there. The greens are starting to come in, and those light blues are really nice too. So it's, to me, really reminiscent of this time of year where the spring is slowly getting started. And I don't know, I really like how these turned out. Here they are. We've gone ahead and twisted these up. One of the things I'm starting to learn a little bit more as I experiment with my dyeing, less is more with a lot of things, and that includes color. So it's okay to go light on the color, to use less pigment, to get a fresh, airy look to the colors. And also, sometimes using fewer colors. I mean, I think this would have been a very lovely skein of yarn with just that pink and blue, especially the way the blue started to break into some pinks and purples. So there's a lot of really great options to doing less than, at least for me. So I hope you've enjoyed watching me dye these light, airy, early spring colors on this non-superwash wool. I think these will make some great late spring or late winter, early spring hats, or maybe a cowl, or maybe even sort of a dense shawl that, because the early mornings at this time of year are still quite cool. I don't know. We'll see what these become some point in the future, but I've liked this experiment, this adventure of dyeing this yarn. I hope you've liked it too. If you do, go ahead and click like on this video. And if you enjoy the content you're finding on this channel, go ahead and click subscribe. And also click the little bell icon so you are notified of any videos that I upload or content that I add to the channel. You can find me on Instagram at GreatScott Knitting. You can find me on Ravelry as GreatScott KCMO. And you can also find me on Facebook. I have a GreatScott Knitting page there as well. So I really do hope you've enjoyed this video. May you have peace in your home and the fullness of joy for all who dwell there.